Hi, my name is Diane Liu, and this week I want to talk about sticking up for what's right. We all have our own sense of what's right and wrong, and though our moral compass may look different from person to person, I think one thing that we can all relate to is we know how it feels to be treated unfairly. And another thing that we all have control over is that we can control how we treat one another. So as we're talking about sticking up for what's right, I think the starting point is to think about how we make each other feel, because that's one way that you can have a significant impact, is just being mindful of what you say and what you do. Let's talk about timing. When should you speak up for what's right? I've heard this idea that if you are not affected by a comment, it's not your place to share your opinion. I think that this is actually the opposite of what we should be doing. For example, if in the workplace I am being discredited because of my age, because I appear young and may come off as inexperienced, what I say about my own ability is not going to carry as much weight as an ally who may be older than me, advocating for me. Because to the person who is already unsure about my abilities, they already have that opinion of me, but they're much more likely to listen to someone that they already respect. So I think in this way, we all have a sense of what's right or wrong, even if we are not part of the group that's being affected. And we should speak up and say, hey, this is how I think about this, so that we can prevent each other from being treated unfairly. In the process of sticking up for what's right, one thing to keep in mind is you may not always know what's right. What I mean by this is maybe your version of what's right have had updates to it that you still need to install. An example of this is the phrase, "I don't see color." At the beginning, that phrase was said very positively. It was meant to say, I don't treat people differently based on color. But nowadays, if you say, "I don't see color," that can be quite minimizing to someone's identity, and it just doesn't quite fit anymore. So if someone kind of shares information with you and shares that maybe something you're saying doesn't quite fit anymore, rather than getting defensive, it's really important to hear what they're saying and then evaluate your own beliefs. See if this thing that you're holding on to is something that is still worth being held onto, or if it's something that you can let go and, replace with something else. In this way, as we're just constantly working on ourselves, that can be a really impactful way of sticking up for what's right. Standing up for what's right won't always look like coming to someone's defense. An example of this is I was in a class where we were discussing people who are on welfare. There were no welfare recipients in the room, and no one was really directly harmed by this discussion. So you may think, well, no harm, no foul. Who cares what people think? But to the people in that room, silence is going to be interpreted as agreement. And if you don't feel comfortable co-signing onto these statements, you should say something. Because just by offering that disruption, just by saying that you don't agree, that's going to cause people to ask and evaluate, well, why do I have the viewpoint I have, and why doesn't this person share my viewpoint? It's in this way that we, as a group, define what is right. And so when you're sticking up for what's right, oftentimes it's going to be these low-stakes conversations that over time kind of shape how we treat one another. One thing that I've learned the hard way is that in order to do this work, you have to protect yourself. There are times when the news is going to be very hard, very heavy. And I've done the thing where I've tried to read as much as possible because I think that doing that will make me feel better, will help me understand, and start making sense of things. But that has never worked out for me. And one thing I've learned is when I do that, I burn myself out and I am of no use to anyone, especially not to myself. So as you're sticking up for what's right, find a balance. Make sure that you're building in ways of protecting your energy so that you can, do this for the long haul. 22 hours ago, I launched an online store called Merch Mart. It is essentially like an online artist alley. You might be asking, what does this have to do with sticking up for what's right? And the answer to that is when I decided to start this project, I went into it with a business partner who brings out the best in me. And what I mean by that is anytime the two of us get together to make a decision, we will argue with each other to come to a solution that has other people's best interests in mind. We will ask ourselves, are we giving them enough time? Are we sharing enough information so that we can be transparent about our decision making? When people get into business, of course, it is for their own self-interest. But the reason why I'm so proud of this store is because I know that it is the result of having other people's best interests in mind. And when I think about it, I get so excited because I know that it's going to benefit all of these artists that we've worked with. And I think that when you're sticking up for what's right, you get to create things that really uplift other people. And I'm so excited. And if you are interested in checking it out, go to jollyduckclub.com. I'll put a link in the description and just, admire all of the amazing artwork that our artists created. To tie it all together, we stick up for what's right because we want to live in a world that is kind to everyone. We stick together because it's more fun that way, but also because we're better together. And then we stick with it because that's the only way we learn what we're truly capable of. If we can do those three things, stick with it, stick together, and stick up for what's right, I think we'll make the world a better place. With that, thanks for sticking with me this week. If you haven't already, please subscribe because this is starting to get really fun for me. And I will see you next week. Bye.